Minutes to win it. I'm Jason Gilbo, Jacobo11. Breaking down tonight's NBA slate. You got just 3 days left of the regular season. Almost everything's wrapped up already, but there are a few playoff implication games, some seeding going on. So those are some things to watch out for in the DFS world, just because you're going to get a full, starters minutes. You're looking at Houston, Minnesota. Houston needs to keep winning. You're looking at Utah. You're looking at Dallas. All huge playoff possibility games, especially that Dallas-Utah game as they fight. Same with Houston there. So those are definitely things to consider when building your lineups tonight. Just because you got some other situations like the Thunder, who could take a rest day tonight against a Lakers team. Given they're at home, there is a 15-point spread. It's the Lakers. So look out for stuff there. Nothing here early on that indicates that Durant or Westbrook or Ibaka will be sitting, but we'll go over that later just in case they do. Looking at the top scoring games of the night, you're looking at Phoenix, Sacramento, 219, just a 5.5 total. Minnesota and Houston, 215. As I mentioned, OKC, LA, 213. Brooklyn and Washington, 211 there, just a 6-point spread. That looks like Wall could be sitting again, just on any indication that a 6-point spread would probably be a little bit larger going up against the Nets. Orlando and Milwaukee, 210. I love that game. Boston, Charlotte, 209. That is one that still some seeding issues to work out in the East, so that's going to be a big one. New Orleans and Chicago. Chicago is eliminated. New Orleans, they've been eliminated since about day one. Cleveland, Atlanta, 203. And then Utah, Dallas, 180. So those are the Vegas totals to look at tonight. And jumping right into things, we're looking at point guards, looking at some injuries. John Wall, questionable tonight, was ruled out yesterday. If he sits again, you're looking at Ramon Sessions being one of the better value plays on today's slate. 2 40-point fantasy point games there. Struggled against Detroit, as he should have, based on solely on matchup. But 29, 32, and 36 minutes so far with Wall out. He's been very solid. Even going back to the game before, 27, 43, 23, and 41. Still producing, still cheap. He's one of your top value plays on the slate. JJ Barea, questionable for tonight's game. He missed the last one. And you are looking at Deron Williams possibly going to be back tonight. So that's something that's worth noting. He played the last game, 29 minutes against the Clippers. He'll be expected to carry the workload again there. Outside of that, not much to really look at. Norris Cole still remaining out. So Tim Frazier will continue to pick up most of the load and be in most of my lineups tonight, going up against a Chicago team that has really struggled defensively, and I don't expect them to lean too heavily on their starters coming down the stretch here. The usual minutes that guys like Jimmy Butler see and Derrick Rose as well. So if you're looking at OKC, you like Westbrook in a matchup against the Lakers. His prices come down a bit, 10,300. Not too shabby there for a guy who's usually up around that mark anyway. If guys were to sit, you'd likely see Randy Foy pick up bigger minutes. When Westbrook and Durant and Ibaka sat, he played 37 minutes against Portland, put up 22 DK points there, shot 3 of 13 from the field. Obviously would draw a much more favorable matchup against the Lakers. Cameron Payne, he's another one. He saw minutes as well, 31. So they would pick up the slack in the backcourt if Westbrook was to sit and become solid value plays in a really great matchup. Looking a little bit downwards, Rajon Rondo, great play tonight, great matchup. If he plays, there is a rest situation, of course. He was rested Saturday's game against the Thunder. Should be back, but still, you never know here. They are on the road. I like the matchup for him. Phoenix has struggled against point guards all season. He's coming off a monster game, 6 days ago when he played 27, 12, and 11 and 10 there against Portland. So has that upside. I'll be reserving him more so for GPPs if he plays, because he's been a little bit up and down of late. Consistency wise hasn't been great, but can't rule it out in cash as well. But I'll lean him more on tournaments. So. Going even lower, you can look at Isaiah Thomas, still scoring, as at will. Did have his streak snapped against Atlanta, only scored 16 points, still produced 30 DK points. Sits at that mid-tier price tag, a little bit cheaper than Rondo. Going up against Kemba Walker, not a known defender. So like Thomas at home here tonight. He's torched Charlotte this season, going 19, 4, and 10 on the average in 2 games. So solid matchup, solid price for him. Another name here, Ricky Rubio. I like him in cash games just because of the matchup there. Yes, he's been a little bit down of late, but really a matchup against Houston should fix that. He's done well against them this season, averaging 11, 4, and 9. Houston turns the ball over a ton. Rubio has that steal upside. And really, this is one of the higher scoring games to target, and Rubio at a pretty nice price tag. So Darren Collison, he's in regardless of Rondo sitting or not. The guy's been playing really well, playing heavy minutes over the last 5 games, or 36 over the last 4 there. So you can count on him for starters minutes. Yes, he's a little bit more expensive than he has been in the past, but he is producing at an elite level right now, 21, 3, and 6 over those 4 games, shooting 46% from 3, 53% from the field in that span. So really look at Collison. If you don't want to quite pay up at shooting guard or at a point guard, I don't mind him at all. Tim Frazier, he's another one over the last 6 games, averaging 14, 4, and 9. Chicago, not a good defending team against point guards and shooting guards there. They've really struggled of late. New Orleans has a nice 100 team total to target, sitting at 205. Frazier still fairly cheap. You can definitely give him a look. Elsewhere, really down low. I mean, I'm not picking on Deron Williams coming off the injury against Utah. Shelvin Mack, he's an interesting GPP play, has a little bit of upside in a favorable matchup against Dallas. Patrick Beverley, he's another one who's been playing well. He's a solid cash game guy. Minnesota's really struggled against guards. And just with Ramon Sessions sitting right there going up against Brooklyn, if Wall sits, he's kind of your guy to keep an eye on. Another name that kind of might be off the grid now if everyone plays for Sacramento tonight is Seth Curry. You're looking at 33, 26, 34, 25 minutes over the last 4 games. He's playing bigger minutes as they kind of dwindled down their starters. So he's a nice play as well. Outside of that, you're not really looking at too many other guys lower. We can shift over the shooting guard. And really, James Harden, coming off an absolutely monster game, 40, 4, and 13 with 4 steals against the Lakers. He's absolutely torched Minnesota this season, 2 games, averaging 28, 4, and 12. He's going to have to carry this team to get into the playoffs, and they'll need him to tonight. He's one of your top players on the slate, a guy who I'm definitely paying up for. Jimmy Butler, on the other hand, playing well, great matchup, but I'm not going to be paying up for him tonight. I think you can go lower, or I think you could pay up for Harden. Just due to, him not really producing over the last few games, and also I don't think he sees anywhere in the high 30s with them being eliminated, or at least he shouldn't, given his injuries this season, as well as just him, always being run out there in the high 30s. I don't think they push him tonight with them already being eliminated. Next one, Devin Booker, 7,100 on DK. Not too badly priced, but still a little expensive than I like. 6,800 on FanDuel. Looking at him, been a little bit quiet of late, been a little bit up and down. Still playing solid minutes, 35 over the last 5, averaging 18, 3, and 3. Consistent option, great matchup against Sacramento. He's one of your top guys to really look at on the slate. And then you can also look at the Minnesota guards, or depending on what site you're on. Wiggins, small forward on FanDuel. Wiggins playing well. He's a lock for cash games tonight. 24, 3, and 2 over the last 5 games, shooting over 50% from the field. Levine as well. I mean, we're looking at a pretty bad Houston Rockets defense. Levine's minutes have been a little bit up and down of late. 27, 26 over the last 2 games, a little concerning for me. But I still think he's in a good spot to do some damage. Then Chris Middleton, he's a guy who's coming off an injury, and he played 43 minutes in that overtime game, dropped 36, 6, and 9 with 4 steals against Philly, 58% from the field. Gets a matchup that Likely not draw Victor Oladipo on him defensively, which is nice. So look at Middleton. I mean, depreciated price tag 6,400 there on DK. That's a nice spot. Still priced relatively high on FanDuel, but still in a great spot as well at 7,200. Um, Big fan of those guys. You can also look at Evan Turner, Avery Bradley, depending on the site. I like the Boston backcourt there against Charlotte. They're in a solid spot. Rodney Hood, nice GPP play just because Dallas struggles against shooting guards this season. Hood's picked up the slack a little bit here of late, averaging 16, 3, and 4 and 3 over the last 5 games. Logging heavy minutes, 38 over the last 5. So if you want a minutes eater, he's out there. And can be relied upon. So outside of that, I mean, you're not looking at any guys that really intrigue me. As a cheap play, Sean Kilpatrick, 3,600 there on DK, draws a favorable matchup against Washington. They are horrid on the perimeter defense there. Kilpatrick shooting the ball fairly well, 45% from the field over the last 5 games, getting around 28 minutes per game. Good spot for him to pick up some points. If you're looking to punt a shooting guard spot, I don't mind it with him in this matchup. Small forward, you got your top options there. Giannis is just back to his triple-double self as he took a little break, averaging 23, 9, and 8 over the last 5 games. I mean, the guy's just absolutely dominating. He's done well against Orlando this season, 28 and 5, shooting 61% in 3 games against them this year. So, God, he's expensive, and he is more expensive than Kevin Durant and LeBron James right now. But, I mean, certainly worth it. If you're looking at FanDuel, he's by far my favorite option because he is cheaper by about $700, but DK is more expensive. Kevin Durant, he's a guy who I don't see reaching his value on his price tag just due to playing the Lakers and possibly being rested. If that situation occurred, Kyle Singler would draw maybe a start, but he's a guy who wouldn't really play a ton of minutes. You're looking at Deion Waiters to pick up most of the slack there, as he played 39 when Durant sat. So no Singler, but look at Waiters as far as the guy who would fill in with Durant out. LeBron James, solid GPP play tonight, just because he draws a decent matchup against Atlanta. Yes, they're tough defensively, but James, pretty much unguardable outside of Kawhi Leonard being up against him. He's averaged 24, 13, and 8 over the last 2 games against Atlanta. Been really solid. I mean, he's been near triple-doubles himself, 27, 9, and 8 over the last 4 games. So, really, James and Giannis, James is obviously the more consistent player, but both are in favorable spots to do some damage. Gordon Hayward, really solid cash game play tonight. Nice matchup against Dallas. This guy's averaged 21, 6, and 4 in 2 games against Dallas this season. Still fairly cheap, great cash game option. Even has GPP upside tonight. You're looking at 27 and 3 over the last 5 games. Utah going to need him to log heavy minutes. Back-to-back 40 fantasy point games. I mean, he's absolutely gone off over the last 2. Going to be relied on for heavy minutes. I'm locking him into cash games as well as into some GPP lineups as well. Rudy Gay, I mean, do you want a guy who's done absolutely nothing most of the season? Last 4 games, 50, 47, 41, and 41 as far as DK points go. Logging big minutes, he's the only starter to really kind of be a little bit more consistent as far as resting. He's been out there 38, 34, 36, and 40 over the last 4. Picked up defensive stats. I mean, 11 steals over the last 4 games, 4 blocks in that span, grabbing rebounds. I'm not sure what's going on, but you can look at Gay and GPPs, draws a solid matchup against Phoenix. This is one of the higher scoring games to target, sitting at 219. So Gay's a solid spot to do some damage. I'm not trusting him in cash games regardless of his recent streak. I would definitely rely on Gordon Hayward more. Cheaper, you can look at Luke Babbitt, consistently getting jobs done, 5,500 against Chicago. They've struggled against small forwards this season. Babbitt's in a good spot to just kind of get you that 30 points and not much more at times. He's kind of that guy that sits in the range. He kind of puts guys like Jay Crowder out of play for me, even though Jay Crowder's been decent and been decent against Charlotte this season. Kind of the same with Trevor Ariza. Babbitt's who would have thought I'd be relying on Babbitt here down the stretch more so than Ariza or Crowder in all formats tonight, but that's the play to look at. Otto Porter, you might be thinking he'd pick up a little bit more time with Wall out. No, hasn't been the issue. He's kind of a fade for me, even though it's a favorable spot. Rather go with those other options. Look at some other guys. You're kind of picking on, maybe hoping Doug McDermott sees some extra minutes with the Bulls being out tonight. I think he's worth a look in GPPs if you want to be completely off the grid. But outside of that, Jordan Hamilton, he's seen 28 minutes over the last 6 games here, averaging 25 fantasy points per game, 4,500. Not a bad spot for him either. Prefer paying up for Babbitt though. Looking at power forward, or if you were looking on center, DeMarcus Cousins in a matchup against Phoenix. The guy has shot 60% in 2 games against Phoenix this season. He's got thrown out. He's only averaged 27 minutes against them, but he's put up 30 and 10 in those 2 games. As far as minutes goes, he's been a little bit up and down of late. Even when he does start, which he's been resting of late, 32, 38, 32, 28, and 28 minutes over the last few games there. So it actually looks like he might be sitting out tonight. So just seeing that now. You're looking at Cauley Stein being in play here, as well as Kostas Koufos. So Cousins sitting, a lot of slack to pick up as far as offense goes with his big 30% usage rate going down. So those guys will pick up the slack as far as the front court minutes go. Solid plays in all formats. Look a little bit cheaper. You can look at guys like Millsap. The guy has tremendous upside. He's played really well against Cleveland, averaging 21, 11, and 4. The defensive upside this guy brings is just phenomenal. 5.5 blocks and steals per game over the last 4. Coming off an absolute monster game against Boston, where he racked up 5 blocks and 2 steals. Really 10, 13, 14 blocks in the last 4 games for Millsap there. So I really like him a lot tonight. Kevin Love, interesting GPP play for a little bit cheaper, draws a favorable matchup against Atlanta. Not a good rebounding team. They struggle to defend power forwards and centers, so definitely keep an eye on him. Derek Favors, a late scratch last game, and you're going to see Trey Lyles pick up some of the slack there, and I like him a lot in this matchup. If he plays 32 minutes against this Dallas front court, he will be a huge value tonight. Dallas ranks 26th in rebounding. They've struggled against power forwards, so definitely give him a look as far as a value play goes. And then under that, you're looking Jabari Parker, still logging heavy minutes, 37 over the last 5 games there. Did play 31, 29 over the last 2, so a little break for him. I still like him in this matchup against Orlando's front court. Markieff Morris, interesting GPP play tonight. Really turned it up against Detroit, but has been up and down. Otherwise, there is some offensive usage to go around with Wall out. Draws a favorable matchup against Brooklyn. Bottom 5 in efficiency against power forwards there. So that's something to keep an eye on as well. Going cheaper, I think you don't really need to tonight. I think there's enough value at other spots. Outside of Trey Lyles, it becomes your top option. As far as value goes, there's no other reason to consider anyone else around them. Looking at center, Karl Anthony Towns, remains your top option. Yeah, he's priced highly, but the guy is just absolutely dominant, averaging 18, 12, and 4 over the last 5 games. Draws a nice matchup against Houston, who he's dominated this season, shooting 53% from the field. He's a pretty easy call there. Pau Gasol, I talked about the minutes possibly being a little bit down for these Bulls starters. That could be something to keep an eye on. I think it's going to be the case tonight. So I'm not really looking to pay up for Pau there. Rather go with Vucevic, who's kind of back to his usual self as far as minutes go, 30 and 35 over the last 2 games. Was coming off the bench for that stretch there. So he's been producing since coming back from injury. Still remains fairly cheap. So you can really look at him as a solid play. Marcin Gortat, he's a guy who I like tonight going up against Houston or going up against Brooklyn. His minutes have been a little bit lower, but I think his price tag is pretty justified for what he's been producing lately. Struggled against Detroit, but looking before that, and the guy's still averaging 15 and 9 over the last 5 games, even with that 8 and 4 dud in there. So He did have some foul trouble, so it wasn't really a down game for him. I'll definitely be looking at Gortat in all formats. As far as other options go, Enes Kanter, you're looking at him tonight in GPPs if everyone plays. If they sit, I mean, he becomes an absolute monster cash game option just because the usage that's going to shift to him and he'll see big minutes. You look at what he did against Portland when everyone sat 33 and 20. He comes in and he rebounds and he scores. That's all this guy does. He's efficient from the field, doesn't do anything defensively or assist. So he's going up against the Lakers defense. He's going to be in play for me no matter what. Just depends on how you're going to use him if everyone plays. Elsewhere, you can look at Alex Len in GPPs. Draws a favorable matchup playing the 4 against the Kings. With Kanter being right there, a little tough to use him. But I think you can also take a look at Rudy Gobert. Cheaper, been a little bit up and down of late. It's been inconsistent, but I think GPP-wise against this Dallas front court should log in a ton of rebounds and definitely in a favorable spot. So I do like him a lot. Outside of that, not really looking at too many guys. Lower at center. Center is a spot where I want to sit in that mid-range or pay up for. So that's going to wrap it up here with the Mints to Win It. Check out dailyfantasycafe.com for all our great tools and content.